Flight attendant James Peterson's hands trembled as security escorted him through the terminal. 15 years of perfect service destroyed in one flight. Behind him, Dr. Maya Washington, CEO of Phoenix Medical Technologies, watched coldly. Just yesterday, he'd served her spoiled food in first class, laughing with colleagues about the diversity hire who couldn't possibly own $1 billion company. Now, his entire crew was terminated, careers ruined. But James didn't know this. It was just the beginning. Within 24 hours, he would discover Maya Washington wasn't just a powerful CEO. She was his new landlord. What dark fate awaits those who underestimate people based on the color of their skin? Before we begin this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and equal treatment for everyone regardless of race, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more true stories that expose the reality many people face every day. Dr. Maya Washington tapped her burgundy Louboutin heels against the polished floor of O'Hare International Airport, checking her Patek Philippe watch for the third time in 5 minutes. As the CEO of Phoenix Medical Technologies, a company now valued at $3.2 billion, every second of her day was meticulously scheduled. This flight to Boston wasn't just another business trip. It was the culmination of 7 years of relentless work, sleepless nights, and countless doors slammed in her face. The Westfield merger would revolutionize affordable healthcare in America, bringing cutting-edge medical devices to communities that had been overlooked for generations. Maya straightened her tailored navy suit, a power move she had learned early in her career. The daughter of Haitian immigrants who had sacrificed everything for her education, Maya carried their dreams on her shoulders. Her father had driven taxis 18 hours a day while her mother cleaned hotel rooms, both working multiple jobs so Maya could attend the best schools. Education is the one thing they can never take from you, her father would say. Those words had become her mantra. Through Harvard Medical School, and later when she founded Phoenix from her tiny apartment kitchen table, her phone buzzed with a message from Kimberly, her chief of staff. Board members confirmed for tomorrow. Westfield seems nervous. You've got this. Maya allowed herself a brief smile. Westfield should be nervous. Their outdated business model charged 10 times what was necessary for life-saving devices. Phoenix's innovative manufacturing process would slash those prices without sacrificing quality, but corporate dinosaurs didn't go extinct without a fight. Maya rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the past 72 hours. She hadn't slept properly since Monday, working through the night to finalize merger documents, coordinating with legal teams across 3 time zones. For once, she had splurged on a first-class ticket. Just this once, she told Kimberly, I need to arrive fresh. Though Maya could easily afford luxury travel, she typically flew economy, directing company funds toward research instead. Her personal motto remained unchanged from her humble beginnings. Excellence requires sacrifice. Dr. Washington, Kimberly rushed toward her, tablet in hand. Final projections came in. The merger will make our cardio stent available in 87% more hospitals, including 23 in predominantly Black and Latino communities that currently have no access to this technology. Maya nodded, feeling a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was why she pushed herself so hard. While competitors prioritized wealthy hospitals and insurance networks, Phoenix focused on medical equity. Her own grandmother had died from a treatable heart condition because the local hospital couldn't afford the newest equipment. Not on my watch, Maya whispered to herself, a promise she renewed daily. The boarding announcement for her flight crackled over the speakers. Maya gathered her carry-on, containing the final merger paperwork and her lucky pen, a graduation gift from her parents. As she approached the jet bridge, she felt the familiar stares. Even in her expensive suit, with her Harvard MBA and billions in corporate valuation, people still did a double take when they saw a Black woman walking confidently toward first class. She had grown accustomed to it over the years, the subtle widening of eyes, the quick glances at her boarding pass, the assumptions that she must be lost. Have a wonderful flight, Dr. Washington, Kimberly said, handing her a folder with additional research on Westfield's board members. Remember, you deserve to rest before tomorrow. Maya smiled gratefully. Kimberly had been with her since the beginning, one of the few people who understood the additional weight Maya carried as a black woman in an industry dominated by white men. Every mistake was magnified, every success questioned. Perfection wasn't just a goal, it was the minimum requirement for being taken seriously. As Maya boarded the plane, she felt an immediate shift in the atmosphere. The lead flight attendant's smile faltered for a microsecond as Maya presented her first-class ticket. Two other crew members exchanged glances. Maya recognized that look. She had seen it countless times throughout her career. It was the look of people who had already decided who she was based solely on her appearance. Her grip tightened around her carry-on handle. She had hoped, just this once, to enjoy the simple luxury of respectful service and a comfortable seat after her exhausting week. "Welcome aboard," the attendant said, his voice noticeably cooler than it had been for the white businessman ahead of her. Maya nodded politely and moved toward her seat, mentally preparing herself. What should have been a peaceful 3-hour flight suddenly felt like another battlefield. But Maya Washington hadn't built a billion-dollar company by backing down from challenges. She straightened her shoulders and moved forward, unaware that this flight would become far more consequential than she could have imagined. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner hummed with activity as Maya settled into seat 2A, plush leather embracing her exhausted body. First class was nearly full, predominantly with older white men in tailored suits who barely glanced up from their devices as she passed. Maya placed her briefcase carefully under the seat in front of her, containing documents worth potentially billions in the healthcare industry. The overhead bin loomed above, and her carry-on was heavier than she had anticipated. "Excuse me," Maya called politely to flight attendant James Peterson, who was assisting an elderly white gentleman across the aisle with great enthusiasm. "Could I get some help with my bag?" James glanced over, his smile evaporating. "You'll need to wait," he replied curtly, returning to his animated conversation about golf courses in Scottsdale with the other passenger. Maya blinked, taken aback by his tone. She waited patiently for 5 minutes while James proceeded to help 4 other passengers with their luggage. When he finally moved in her direction, she heard him mutter to his colleague, Lisa Morris, "Probably in the wrong section. Happens all the time." Maya's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Wrong section? She had founded Phoenix Medical Technologies from scratch, transforming it from a startup in her apartment to a company that now employed over 3,000 people. She had presented to the United Nations, been featured on the cover of Forbes, and changed cardiovascular care standards worldwide. Yet, here she was, being dismissively profiled by someone who hadn't bothered to look at her boarding pass. "Your bag, ma'am?" James finally approached, his tone suggesting he was doing her an extraordinary favor. "Thank you," Maya responded with the practiced calm she had perfected in countless boardrooms, where she was often the only black woman present. She watched as James carelessly shoved her bag into the compartment, a stark contrast to the delicate handling he had given the other passengers' belongings. Throughout the boarding process, Maya observed as flight attendants distributed hot towels, champagne, and amenity kits to the other first-class passengers. Each time an attendant passed her seat, they miraculously became preoccupied with some urgent task. After 20 minutes, Maya remained the only passenger without even a glass of water. "Excuse me," she finally said as James passed by again. "Could I please have some water?" James sighed audibly, as if her simple request was an unreasonable burden. "I'll get to it when I can," he replied, before immediately pouring another glass of champagne for a white woman who hadn't even asked for it. The woman across the aisle caught Maya's eye, her face showing a mixture of embarrassment and discomfort at witnessing the disparity in treatment. Meanwhile, 2 businessmen in the row behind Maya exchanged smirks, clearly amused by her situation. Have you ever experienced this kind of blatant discrimination? Comment number 1 if you felt the sting of being treated differently because of how you look. If you believe everyone deserves equal respect regardless of race, hit that like button right now. And if you want to see more stories about people standing up against everyday injustice, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. The flight attendants continued their pattern of preferential treatment as the plane prepared for takeoff. When James finally returned with Maya's water, he placed it on her tray without a napkin, some of it sloshing over the side. She noticed. His name badge then, James Peterson, senior flight attendant. She committed it to memory, along with Lisa Morris, who continued to throw judgmental glances in her direction. Maya took a deep breath and focused on her merger documents. Tomorrow's meeting would change the landscape of affordable healthcare in America. She couldn't allow this petty discrimination to distract her from what truly mattered. Still, as the plane accelerated down the runway, she couldn't help but wonder, what would happen when meal service began? Would the disparate treatment continue, or would the crew recognize their mistake? And more importantly, how far was Maya willing to go to stand up for herself and others who face similar treatment every day? The seatbelt sign dinged off at cruising altitude, and the first-class cabin sprang into well-choreographed service. White tablecloths appeared on tray tables, followed by real silverware and crystal glasses. Maya watched as James and Lisa moved efficiently through the cabin, their professionalism evident in every interaction, with everyone except her. Today's first-class menu features herb-crusted salmon with wild rice pilaf, or rosemary chicken with roasted vegetables, James announced, cheerfully to a silver-haired executive in 1C. And may I recommend the Chateau Margaux to complement either entree? The elaborate meal service continued around Maya, each passenger receiving personalized attention and detailed descriptions of their gourmet options. The aromas of freshly prepared food filled the cabin, reminding Maya she hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. When James finally approached her seat, his demeanor shifted dramatically. "Chicken or fish?" he asked flatly. No description, no wine pairing, no smile. "Could you tell me about the chicken option, please?" Maya asked politely. James sighed, visibly irritated. "It's chicken, with vegetables." "Then I'll try the chicken, thank you," Maya replied, maintaining her composure. 20 minutes later, James returned with a tray that immediately looked different from those served to other passengers. While others received elegantly plated meals on porcelain, Maya's chicken was haphazardly thrown onto the plate, the vegetables looking wilted and discolored. Most concerningly, when she cut into the chicken, it was noticeably pink in the center. "Excuse me," Maya called to James as he passed. "I believe there's an issue with my meal. The chicken appears to be undercooked." James paused, his expression hardening. "That's how the chef prepares it. It's a premium preparation you might not be accustomed to." "I'm quite familiar with fine dining," Maya responded evenly, her years in corporate America having prepared her for such microaggressions. "However, raw chicken poses a health risk. Could I please have the salmon instead?" James's nostrils flared slightly. "The salmon has been fully allocated. Perhaps you'd prefer something from the economy menu," he suggested loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. A chorus of stifled chuckles rippled through the first-class cabin. An older gentleman across the aisle frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the situation unfolding before him. Maya recognized him vaguely. William Thornton, possibly a retired executive she'd seen at industry events. "I'd simply like a safely prepared meal like every other passenger in this cabin," Maya stated firmly. "I've paid the same fare as everyone else." Lisa approached, her forced smile doing little to mask her condescension. "Is there a problem here? Some passengers are trying to enjoy their dining experience." "Yes, there is a problem," Maya replied. "I've been served raw chicken, which is unsafe for consumption." "Our first-class meals are prepared by award-winning chefs," Lisa responded defensively. "Perhaps you're just not accustomed to gourmet cuisine." The implication was clear. They believed she didn't belong in first class, that she couldn't possibly recognize quality food, that her presence was somehow diminishing their premium experience. It was a sentiment Maya had encountered countless times throughout her career. From being mistaken for administrative staff in her own company, to having security called on her when she tried to enter the executive floor of a potential partner company. Maya discreetly took out her phone and snapped a photo of the raw chicken. She also angled the camera to capture James and Lisa's name badges. Years of business experience had taught her the value of documentation. "Is photography allowed during meal service?" James asked sharply. "It is when food safety is concerned," Maya replied, her voice calm but resolute. She pushed the tray away slightly, the pink chicken glistening under the cabin lights. "I'd like to speak with the lead flight attendant, please." James and Lisa exchanged glances, a silent communication that Maya had witnessed countless times when people realized she wouldn't quietly accept mistreatment. "I'll see if Rebecca is available," Lisa finally said, her tone suggesting Maya was creating an unnecessary disturbance. As Lisa walked away, Maya noticed William Thornton watching the interaction with increasing interest. He gave her a subtle nod of support, the kind of acknowledgement that comes from someone who recognizes injustice when they see it. What Maya didn't know was that this meal incident was only the beginning of a calculated attack. The raw chicken wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. And the consequences would extend far beyond this 3-hour flight, affecting not just Maya's immediate comfort, but potentially the future of affordable health care for millions of Americans. The tension in the first-class cabin grew palpable as Rebecca Wilson, the lead flight attendant, approached Maya's seat with an air of practiced authority. Rebecca was tall with meticulously styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I understand there's some confusion about our first-class meal service," Rebecca began, her tone suggesting Maya was the one confused, not the other way around. "There's no confusion," Maya stated calmly, gesturing to the undercooked chicken, still sitting on her tray. "I was served unsafe food, and when I pointed it out, your colleagues suggested I was simply unfamiliar with fine dining." Rebecca glanced at the pink chicken, then at James and Lisa, who hovered nearby. "Our premium meals are prepared according to strict culinary standards. Perhaps there's a misunderstanding about what properly cooked poultry looks like." Maya interrupted, her patience waning. "I assure you, I'm quite familiar with food safety standards." Rebecca's professional veneer slipped slightly, a flash of annoyance crossing her features. Dr. Washington," Maya corrected firmly. "Dr. Washington," Rebecca continued with exaggerated politeness. "I apologize if you feel your dining experience hasn't met your expectations. However, I've checked with our galley staff and all meals were prepared identically. Perhaps you'd prefer a sandwich from our alternative menu." The subtle implication that Maya was being difficult, that her standards were somehow unreasonable, hung in the air. Before Maya could respond, a sharp cramp seized her abdomen. She pressed a hand against her stomach, a wave of nausea suddenly washing over her. "Excuse me," she managed, rising quickly and making her way to the lavatory. Inside the cramped bathroom, Maya braced herself against the sink as her body revolted against whatever had been in that chicken. Sweat beaded on her forehead as another cramp twisted her insides. Food poisoning. The realization hit her with certainty. She'd experienced it once before after a business dinner in Shanghai, but this wasn't accidental. The chicken had been visibly undercooked. Had they deliberately served her contaminated food? After several agonizing minutes, Maya splashed cold water on her face and gathered her composure. As she prepared to return to her seat, voices drifted through the thin lavatory door. "She's being completely unreasonable," Lisa's distinctive voice complained, "acting like she's some kind of royalty." "These people always find something to complain about," James responded, dismissively. "Probably used her diversity hire status to get that fancy title. No way she earned it legitimately." "Did you see her face when I suggested the economy menu?" Another laugh. "Priceless." Maya froze, her hand on the door handle. The casual cruelty, the dismissive racism, the assumption that her achievements couldn't possibly be legitimate. It was all too familiar. Throughout her career, she'd endured whispers about affirmative action and diversity quotas, as if her Harvard medical degree and the billion-dollar company she'd built from nothing were somehow handed to her because of her race. Taking a steadying breath, Maya quietly activated the voice recorder on her phone before opening the door. The conversation abruptly halted as she emerged. James and Lisa quickly busied themselves with the beverage cart, avoiding eye contact. Maya returned to her seat, her mind racing despite the physical discomfort gripping her body. This wasn't just poor service or casual racism. There was something coordinated about it. She began mentally documenting every interaction: James Peterson, Lisa Morris, Rebecca Wilson. Each name, each incident, each microaggression. From across the aisle, William Thornton caught her eye. The older gentleman leaned slightly toward her. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, genuine concern in his voice. "I couldn't help noticing your treatment has been inconsistent with the service standards of this airline." "Thank you for your concern," Maya responded carefully, unsure of his intentions. "I fly this route weekly," William continued, keeping his voice low. "I've never seen crew behave this way. Something's not right." Before Maya could respond, she noticed her seatmate for the first time, a man who had boarded late and immediately buried himself in paperwork. He now watched their exchange with undisguised interest. "Stephen Reynolds," he introduced himself, extending a hand toward Maya. "Couldn't help overhearing your troubles. Terrible way to treat a first-class passenger." Maya shook his hand cautiously. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. Reynolds smiled sympathetically, but something in his eyes didn't match the expression. A calculating coldness that Maya recognized from countless negotiation tables. As the flight continued, Maya's physical discomfort increased. The food poisoning was taking hold, but she refused to show weakness. Meanwhile, she noticed Reynolds watching her closely, his apparent sympathy feeling increasingly performative. She discreetly opened her phone's browser, using the in-flight Wi-Fi to search his name. The results confirmed her growing suspicion. Stephen Reynolds, Executive Vice President at Medicorp, Phoenix's largest competitor and the company that stood to lose the most if tomorrow's merger went through. Maya's medical devices would undercut Medicorp's prices by 60% while matching their quality. This wasn't coincidence. Reynolds was on this specific flight, seated next to her, for a reason. The pieces were beginning to fall into place. The discriminatory treatment, the raw chicken, Reynolds' presence. This wasn't random bad service. It was a calculated attempt to sabotage her Boston meeting. But why would flight attendants participate in corporate espionage? What was their connection to Medicorp? As these questions swirled in her mind, Maya didn't realize that the worst was yet to come. The 3-hour flight to Boston was about to become the most consequential journey of her career, and potentially the future of affordable healthcare in America hung in the balance. Stephen Reynolds smiled at Maya with practiced charm, his expensive cologne failing to mask the predatory energy emanating from him. "Quite unfortunate about your meal, Dr. Washington. Not the experience one expects in first class, is it?" His voice carried just the right amount of sympathy, but Maya had spent years reading people across negotiation tables. The disconnect between his words and the calculating look in his eyes triggered her internal alarms. As CEO of Phoenix Medical Technologies, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect insincerity. "These things happen," Maya replied neutrally, studying him. Stephen Reynolds, early 50s, impeccably tailored Tom Ford suit, Rolex Daytona peeking from beneath his cuff, the uniform of old money and established power. "Let me help you with that," Reynolds said suddenly, reaching for her merger documents that she'd placed on the center console. Before Maya could react, his hand accidentally knocked over his sparkling water, sending liquid cascading across her paperwork. "Oh, how clumsy of me," Reynolds exclaimed with theatrical dismay as Maya quickly salvaged the soaking documents. The water had saturated critical financial projections and term sheets, papers that represented months of work. "Strange coincidence," Maya said coolly, now certain this was no accident. "You're Stephen Reynolds of Medicorp, aren't you?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face before his smooth veneer returned. "You've heard of me? I'm flattered. Medicorp's Executive Vice President, the company that charges $80,000 for cardiac stents. My company can produce for $12,000. Reynolds shrugged unapologetically. "The market bears what the market bears, Dr. Washington. Not everyone believes in leaving money on the table. Not everyone believes healthcare should bankrupt families either," Maya countered, her stomach cramping painfully from the food poisoning while her mind raced. Reynolds' presence wasn't coincidental. He was here to sabotage her meeting. Medicorp stood to lose billions if Phoenix's affordable medical devices gained market share. "Such admirable idealism," Reynolds smirked. "Though I wonder how Boston's old guard business community will receive your accusations against this flight crew. They might see it as playing the race card. Connecticut Avenue Club members tend to be rather traditional in their outlook. The threat was thinly veiled. The Connecticut Avenue Club was an exclusive business association where Maya's merger meeting would take place. Reynolds was implying that any complaint about racial discrimination would damage her credibility in Boston's conservative business circles. Interesting theory, Maya replied evenly, though her pulse quickened. Almost as interesting as why. Medicorp's executive VP happens to be on the same flight as me, seated conveniently beside me, the day before a merger that threatens your market position. Reynolds' smile tightened. Pure coincidence. Like the raw chicken, the crew's behavior, all coincidence? Perhaps you're being paranoid, Dr. Washington, seeing racism where there's merely poor service. Maya noticed James passing nearby, his eyes meeting Reynolds' briefly. A nearly imperceptible nod passed between them. That's when the final piece clicked into place. This wasn't random. Reynolds and the crew were working together. "Tell me, Mr. Reynolds," Maya said calmly despite another wave of nausea hitting her. "How long has Medicorp been using airline staff to sabotage competitors?" His face hardened. "Careful with accusations, Dr. Washington. They could be construed as defamation. Just as you're careful with your corporate espionage." She smiled thinly. "The SEC takes a dim view of such tactics." Reynolds leaned closer, dropping all pretense of friendliness. "Listen carefully. By the time you land in Boston, there will be protesters outside Westfield's headquarters claiming your medical devices failed quality tests. Local news has already received an anonymous tip. The Connecticut Avenue Club members will have received emails detailing supposed fraud in your company. None of it's true, of course, but the doubt will be enough to kill your merger." Maya felt ice in her veins. Reynolds wasn't bluffing. Medicorp was launching a full-scale attack on her company and reputation. "You'd rather maintain obscene profit margins than save lives," she observed, her voice steady despite her growing physical discomfort. "It's just business," he replied coldly. "No, Mr. Reynolds. It's corruption. And unlike you, I keep receipts." Maya discreetly tapped her phone in her lap, still recording their conversation while simultaneously using the in-flight Wi-Fi to research deeper connections between Medicorp and the airline. Have you ever caught someone red-handed in their scheme? Comment number 1 if you've experienced that satisfying moment when a manipulator realizes they've been outplayed. If you believe corporate corruption has no place in healthcare, smash that like button now. And if you want to see more stories about underdogs fighting against powerful systems, subscribe and hit that notification bell. As Maya continued her research, the flight attendants became visibly more hostile. James practically shoved past her when serving drinks to other passengers. Lisa whispered something to Rebecca while glaring in Maya's direction. The coordinated nature of their behavior became increasingly obvious. What Maya discovered next sent adrenaline coursing through her system. James Peterson had previously worked at Medicorp corporate events. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd been employed by their events team for 3 years before joining the airline. The connection was indisputable. But how deep did this conspiracy go? Would Maya be able to save her merger and expose the corruption before landing in Boston? And what other tactics would Reynolds and his flight crew accomplices employ to ensure she never made it to tomorrow's meeting? Maya's fingers moved rapidly across her phone screen as she dug deeper into the connections between the flight crew and Medicorp. The food poisoning made concentration difficult, but years of working through migraines and exhaustion during medical school had prepared her for functioning despite physical discomfort. Using the airline's spotty Wi-Fi, she accessed the flight manifest through her premium flyer account. There it was, the smoking gun. James Peterson, Lisa Morris, Rebecca Wilson, and Captain Paul Harrison had all specifically requested this flight, making schedule changes just 3 days ago, precisely when Maya's reservation had been confirmed. Coordinated attack, Maya murmured to herself, saving screenshots as evidence. This went beyond poor service or casual racism. This was corporate sabotage using discriminatory treatment as cover. If she failed to make her meeting tomorrow, Medicorp would maintain its stranglehold on medical device pricing, continuing to profit from overpriced equipment that many hospitals couldn't afford. Maya glanced at Reynolds, who was pretending to review documents while surreptitiously watching her. She knew his type well. Men who saw her success as an anomaly, who believed her achievements must have come through some unfair advantage rather than her intelligence and relentless work ethic. A discreet cough drew her attention. William Thornton, the elderly gentleman across the aisle, caught her eye before carefully sliding a folded napkin onto her armrest during a stretch. Maya casually picked it up and unfolded it beneath her tray table. Recording everything since boarding, former civil rights attorney, will testify if needed. Thornton, the note read. Maya felt a surge of gratitude. A witness, and not just any witness, but a former attorney with credibility. She gave Thornton a subtle nod of thanks, then returned to her investigation. The stakes extended beyond her personal discomfort, or even this meeting. Phoenix's affordable medical devices could literally save thousands of lives in underserved communities. That was worth fighting for, regardless of what Reynolds and his accomplices threw at her. "You know what awaits you in Boston, right?" Reynolds said softly, breaking the silence between them. "Medicorp has friends in the local business community. Protesters are already gathering. Your reputation will be in tatters before you step off this plane." "Threats now, Mr. Reynolds?" Not very subtle. Not threats. Reality. His smile was glacial. "Smart move would be to rethink your pricing strategy. Maybe Phoenix doesn't need to undercut Medicorp quite so dramatically. We could discuss a more reasonable market approach." Maya understood immediately. "You're offering me a bribe to keep my prices higher, so patients who need these devices can continue to go bankrupt?" "I prefer to call it market stabilization," Reynolds replied smoothly. "Everyone wins." "Except the patients who can't afford treatment," Maya countered, discreetly ensuring her phone was still recording. Reynolds shrugged. "Collateral damage. Business isn't charity, Dr. Washington." Maya felt another wave of nausea hit her, more intense than before. The food poisoning was worsening, but she fought to maintain her composure. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her weakened. Around her, other passengers had begun to notice the tension. Some were openly watching the interactions between Maya and the crew. A few had phones out, possibly recording. Social media's power to expose injustice had become a critical ally in situations like this. Maya opened her email and began composing a message to her legal team, attaching the photos and recordings she'd gathered so far. If anything escalated further, there would be evidence safely backed up in multiple locations. From the corner of her eye, she noticed other passengers exchanging uncomfortable glances. The discrimination had become so blatant that even those initially amused by her treatment were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats. One woman whispered to her husband, who frowned and nodded toward Maya with concern. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had shifted. The crew's behavior was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore or justify. Maya knew from experience that public opinion could turn quickly when injustice became undeniable. As she continued gathering evidence, Thornton slipped her another note. "Captain seems involved too. Overheard crew saying something about an emergency landing." Maya's pulse quickened. An emergency landing would ensure she missed her meeting entirely. The lengths Medicorp was willing to go to protect their profit margins was staggering, but not surprising. Corporations like theirs viewed affordable healthcare as a threat, not a solution. Before she could fully process this information, the cabin speakers crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Harrison speaking," a deep voice announced. "We're experiencing some cabin disturbance issues, and will be making an unscheduled landing in Cleveland to resolve the situation. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for landing." Maya's eyes met Thornton's across the aisle. His slight head shake confirmed what she already knew. There was no legitimate disturbance. This was the next phase of their plan to prevent her from reaching Boston. As the plane began its descent toward Cleveland, Maya knew she needed to act quickly. The merger, her company's future, and most importantly, the affordable health care of millions, depended on her next move. The Dreamliner banked sharply, beginning its unscheduled descent toward Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the first-class cabin as passengers exchanged puzzled glances. There had been no turbulence, no obvious disruption to justify an emergency landing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rebecca's voice came over the intercom. "We apologize for the inconvenience. We're making this unscheduled stop due to a disruptive passenger situation that requires immediate attention." Maya felt multiple sets of eyes turned toward her. The implication was clear. She was being framed as the disruptive passenger. Captain Harrison's voice followed, his tone carrying false concern. "We take the safety and comfort of all passengers very seriously and cannot allow disruptive behavior to continue. Local authorities will meet the aircraft upon arrival." The plan was becoming transparent. Delay Maya by forcing her off the plane in Cleveland, possibly have her detained on false accusations, ensuring she'd miss tomorrow's critical merger meeting. Meanwhile, Reynolds would arrive in Boston unimpeded, free to spread his manufactured rumors about Phoenix Medical. "This is outrageous," William Thornton stated loudly, no longer bothering to keep his voice down. "There has been absolutely no disruption on this flight except the deplorable service provided to Dr. Washington." A businessman 2 rows ahead turned around. "He's right. I've been watching. The only disruption has been from the crew." James approached Maya's seat, his expression a mask of rehearsed concern. "Ma'am, we'll need you to gather your belongings. Authorities will escort you from the aircraft in Cleveland." "On what grounds?" Maya asked calmly, despite her racing heart. "Creating a hostile environment, verbally abusing crew members, and making other passengers uncomfortable," James recited, as if reading from a prepared script. A woman across the aisle gasped. "That's a complete lie. She's been nothing but polite while you've been horrible to her." Reynolds shifted uncomfortably beside Maya, clearly not expecting other passengers to come to her defense. The plan was unraveling. Witnesses were speaking up. "I have documented everything," Maya stated firmly, addressing the entire cabin now. "The discriminatory service, the raw chicken served only to me, the accidental water spill on my documents, and the coordinated effort between certain crew members and my business competitor seated beside me." She held up her phone, including recordings of conversations planning this emergency landing to prevent me from attending a business meeting that would make life-saving medical devices affordable for millions of Americans. Lisa rushed forward. "Recording crew members is against airline policy." "Actually," Thornton interrupted, "recording conversations you're part of is perfectly legal in most states when there's no expectation of privacy, especially when documenting potential civil rights violations." His authoritative tone betrayed his legal background. Rebecca appeared, her professional demeanor cracking under pressure. "Captain Harrison has made the decision for safety reasons." "Based on false information you provided him," Maya countered. She turned to her fellow passengers. "My name is Dr. Maya Washington, CEO of Phoenix Medical Technologies. Tomorrow, I'm scheduled to finalize a merger that will reduce the cost of essential cardiac devices by 60%, making them accessible to hospitals serving underrepresented communities. Medicorp, represented by the man beside me, stands to lose billions if this merger proceeds." Reynolds' face flushed with anger. "This is defamation." "It's the truth," Maya cut him off. "And I suspect the captain may not have all the information about why we're really diverting to Cleveland." Making a split-second decision, Maya reached for her phone and dialed a number. The food poisoning was making her dizzy, but this call could change everything. "Who are you calling?" James demanded. "Robert Campbell," Maya replied calmly, "the CEO of this airline. We serve on the National Medical Innovation Board together." The color drained from Rebecca's face. James and Lisa exchanged panicked looks. Maya put the phone on speaker as it connected. "Maya, unusual to hear from you mid-flight," came a booming voice. "How's the service treating you on the Boston route?" "Actually, Robert, that's why I'm calling. We're currently being diverted to Cleveland because I've allegedly been disruptive, though multiple passengers can confirm I've done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, I've been served raw chicken, had my documents deliberately soaked, and discovered your crew has connections to Medicorp, who stands to lose billions from my merger tomorrow." "What?" Campbell's voice thundered through the phone. Who's the cabin crew? Put the lead attendant on immediately. Rebecca's hands trembled as Maya held the phone toward her. This is Rebecca Wilson, sir. Rebecca, return to original flight plan immediately. Call Cleveland and abort landing. I'll meet this flight personally in Boston. No one leaves the aircraft until I arrive. Yes, sir, Rebecca stammered, all pretense of authority evaporating. Maya, are you all right? Campbell asked. Dealing with food poisoning from the raw chicken I was served, but I'll manage, she replied, finally allowing some of her physical discomfort to show. I'll have medical staff waiting, Campbell assured her. And Maya, I'm ordering an immediate investigation. The call ended, and the cabin fell into stunned silence. Within minutes, the captain announced they were returning to their original flight path to Boston, offering a vague explanation about resolved concerns. Reynolds sat rigid beside Maya, his plan collapsing spectacularly. This isn't over, he muttered under his breath. You're right, Maya agreed quietly. It's just beginning. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin transformed palpably as the plane leveled off, resuming its course to Boston. The same flight attendants who had treated Maya with contempt now hovered uncertainly, their faces masks of barely concealed panic. Rebecca Wilson stood at the front of the cabin, ashen-faced, as she whispered urgently into the cabin phone, presumably updating Captain Harrison about their CEO's intervention. James Peterson approached Maya's seat, a glass of water trembling slightly in his hand. Dr. Washington, can I get you anything for your discomfort? The condescension had vanished from his voice, replaced by thinly disguised fear. Perhaps food that isn't deliberately undercooked? Maya replied coolly, despite another wave of nausea washing over her. Though I suspect anything from the galley might be similarly compromised at this point. William Thornton, the retired civil rights attorney, leaned across the aisle. I have some stomach medication in my carry-on if you need it, Dr. Washington. Thank you. Maya nodded gratefully, accepting the tablets he offered. She turned back to James. I'll need a complete list of everyone who handled food preparation for this flight. I don't have that information, James stammered, his earlier arrogance evaporated. Robert will, Maya stated simply, referring to the airline CEO by his first name. The implicit reminder of her connection sent James scurrying away. Stephen, Reynolds sat rigidly beside her, furiously typing on his phone. Maya glanced over just in time to see him sending messages to someone named Harrison, undoubtedly coordinating with the captain. She also noticed him attempting to delete previous text exchanges, evidence of their conspiracy. Deleting evidence is obstruction of justice, Mr. Reynolds, Maya observed quietly. A federal offense when it involves interstate commerce, which commercial aviation certainly does. Reynolds' fingers froze over his screen. You've proven nothing. Actually, I've proven quite a lot, and I suspect your phones, yours and the crew's, will prove even more once they're examined. A brief look of panic crossed Reynolds' face before he mastered it. Medicorp has an army of attorneys. So do I, Maya responded evenly. Along with something you don't have, the moral high ground. Racial discrimination combined with corporate sabotage makes for compelling headlines, doesn't it? The cabin phone rang, and Rebecca answered it before approaching Maya tentatively. Dr. Washington, Captain Harrison would like to speak with you. Maya raised an eyebrow. Would he? How interesting that he's suddenly interested in a passenger he was about to have removed based on fabricated accusations. Rebecca swallowed hard. He says it's urgent. I'm sure it is. Maya took the phone. This is Dr. Washington. Dr. Washington, this is Captain Paul Harrison, came a deep, authoritative voice now stripped of its earlier confidence. There appears to have been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Captain, Maya interrupted. There was a coordinated effort to prevent me from reaching Boston for tomorrow's merger meeting, an effort that involved serving me contaminated food, creating a hostile environment, and attempting an unnecessary diversion to Cleveland. I was informed there was a security concern by crew members connected to Medicorp, my company's primary competitor, Maya finished for him. Quite a coincidence, wouldn't you say? Silence hung on the line momentarily. "We're receiving priority clearance for landing in Boston," the captain finally said. "We should arrive ahead of schedule." "Excellent. And Captain, I suggest you preserve all communications from today. The investigation will be thorough." Maya handed the phone back to Rebecca. She noticed how other passengers were now watching her with undisguised admiration. The same people who had witnessed her mistreatment earlier were now seeing her masterful handling of the situation. It was a dynamic Maya had experienced before, the pivot from underestimation to respect. Despite her victory, Maya felt her condition worsening. The food poisoning was taking a serious toll, but she refused to show weakness. She had learned early in her career that displaying vulnerability was a luxury not afforded to Black women in leadership positions. As the plane began its descent into Boston, Maya made an unexpected discovery while researching the airline's corporate structure on her phone. Skyline Airways, the carrier they were flying, was on a potential acquisition list for Phoenix's parent company. The airline was struggling financially and looking for investors. This information wasn't public yet, but as CEO, Maya had access to confidential corporate development strategies. The irony was almost poetic. The very airline whose employees had discriminated against her might soon be owned by her company. Have you ever witnessed someone's attitude completely flip when they realized who they were really dealing with? Comment number 1 if you've seen that satisfying moment when underestimation turns to panic. If you believe justice should come for those who discriminate, hit that like button now. And if you want to see more stories about powerful comebacks against those who abuse their positions, subscribe and ring that notification bell right now. Reynolds must have noticed the slight smile that crossed Maya's face. "You look rather pleased for someone who's been poisoned," he observed bitterly. "I was just contemplating the future, Mr. Reynolds. Specifically, who might own this airline in the near future." A flash of understanding crossed Reynolds' face. "Phoenix is considering acquiring Skyline?" "I neither confirm nor deny," Maya replied. "But wouldn't it be interesting if the flight attendants who discriminated against me based on race suddenly found themselves working for a company where I set the corporate culture and inclusion policies?" For the first time, Reynolds looked genuinely alarmed. The corporate chess game had expanded beyond tomorrow's merger, and he was suddenly several moves behind. The fasten seatbelt sign illuminated as Boston's skyline came into view. Maya closed, her eyes briefly, gathering her strength for what came next. The battle wasn't over. Reynolds had mentioned protesters and planted stories. The fight would continue on the ground, but the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. What Maya didn't yet realize was that while she'd been fighting in the air, social media was already ablaze with accounts from passengers who had witnessed her treatment. The hashtag Deutscher Flying While Black was trending, and the airline's stock had dropped 3% in the past hour. The story was exploding far beyond the confines of their aircraft, and Maya Washington was about to land in Boston, not just as a CEO fighting for a merger, but as the unwitting centerpiece of a national conversation about race, power, and accountability. The Dreamliner touched down at Boston Logan International Airport with unusual smoothness, almost as if Captain Harrison was attempting to compensate for his earlier actions through piloting finesse. Maya Washington gathered her belongings methodically, her movements deliberate to mask the physical discomfort still ravaging her body. The food poisoning had intensified during descent, but her face revealed nothing, a skill perfected through years of high-stakes negotiations. "Boston Logan International, where the local time is 5:47 p.m., announced Rebecca, her once authoritative voice now trembling slightly. "We thank you for flying with Skyline Airways and apologize for any inconveniences during our journey." The pregnant pause between her words spoke volumes. The crew knew their careers hung by threads, unraveling with each passing minute. As the seatbelt sign dimmed, no one moved. An unusual tension blanketed the cabin as passengers remained seated, watching the drama's final act unfold. Maya stood, carefully, her designer suit impeccable despite the tumultuous flight. Stephen Reynolds attempted to push past her into the aisle, his desperation to escape palpable. "Pardon me," Maya said calmly, blocking his path with her briefcase. "I believe CEO Campbell requested everyone remain aboard until his arrival." Reynolds' face contorted with barely contained fury. You've made a powerful enemy today, Washington. Medicorp doesn't forgive. Threatening a competitor in front of witnesses? Bold strategy. Maya smiled thinly. Perhaps save your remaining dignity for the SEC investigation. Beyond the aircraft windows, an unusual welcoming committee assembled on the tarmac. A sleek black Suburban with Skyline Airways executive insignia had pulled alongside the jet bridge. Near it stood a medical team with equipment. Campbell had taken her food poisoning seriously. Dr. Washington, Rebecca approached hesitantly. On behalf of the crew, I want to express our sincere apologies for any misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? William Thornton interrupted from across the aisle. I've documented 17 separate discriminatory actions and what appears to be corporate espionage. Misunderstanding doesn't begin to cover criminal conspiracy. Rebecca's practiced apology crumbled. We were just following orders? Maya finished for her. Fascinating how that defense never holds up in court. The aircraft door opened, revealing Robert Campbell, a silver-haired executive with commanding presence. Behind him stood 4 serious-looking individuals in dark suits, Skyline's head of corporate security and legal team. Maya, Campbell, moved directly to her, genuine concern etching his features. Our medical team is ready. How severe is your condition? Manageable, Maya replied, though the beads of sweat on her forehead suggested otherwise. The merger takes priority over my comfort. Campbell nodded, understanding the weight of tomorrow's meeting. We've arranged direct transport to Massachusetts General for treatment while maintaining your schedule. Our legal team will begin taking statements immediately. His gaze hardened as it swept over the flight crew. No one leaves until we've conducted preliminary interviews. James Peterson stepped forward, desperation evident in his voice. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. Save it, Campbell cut him off. We have video from multiple passengers already circulating online. Skyline's stock dropped 3% in the past hour. Maya hadn't realized passengers had been recording the incidents. The modern accountability of smartphone cameras had worked in her favor. As Maya moved toward the exit, she noticed news vans assembling near the terminal. Somehow the story had leaked. Reynolds noticed too, his face paling. The local news received an anonymous tip, Campbell explained, following her gaze. Though not the one Reynolds planted. Instead, they got footage of his co-conspirators mistreating a prominent black CEO. Twitter's calling it them flying while black. Maya maintained her composure, though her strategic mind immediately calculated the implications. The public nature of this incident could actually strengthen her position in tomorrow's merger. The narrative had transformed. She wasn't just a CEO with innovative medical technology. She was now a symbol of resilience against discrimination. As she deplaned, a young flight attendant who hadn't been involved in the conspiracy whispered, "My sister has a congenital heart condition. Your cardio stent would make her surgery affordable. Thank you for fighting for patients like her." The simple comment reminded Maya what was truly at stake, not her comfort or even the vindication against discrimination, but accessible healthcare for countless patients. Medical personnel approached with a wheelchair, but Maya politely declined. "I'll walk," she stated firmly, unwilling to display vulnerability with cameras potentially present. The team compromised by walking alongside her, ready to intervene if necessary. In the terminal, William Thornton handed her his business card. "I've already briefed my former partners at Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. They're very interested in the intersection of racial discrimination and corporate espionage." "Thank you," Maya said sincerely, recognizing the powerful ally she'd found. As Maya walked through the terminal toward her transportation, she noticed Reynolds, being detained by airport security near the baggage claim. He was gesticulating wildly, his corporate armor crumbling as he faced consequences perhaps for the first time in his privileged career. The smear campaign he'd promised was already backfiring. Instead of protesters against Phoenix Medical, a small group of activists had assembled with hastily made signs supporting Maya and condemning discrimination. The narrative had completely flipped. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Kimberly. Merger board members saw the viral videos. "They're outraged on your behalf. Westfield CEO called personally to express support. Negotiations now tilted in our favor. Despite the physical pain still coursing through her system, Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Reynolds had unwittingly strengthened her position rather than weakening it. The merger would proceed, medical devices would become affordable, and in the process, a powerful spotlight now shone on discrimination that too often remained in the shadows. But as the Suburban whisked her toward the hospital, Maya knew this fight was far from over. Reynolds's threats weren't empty. Medicorp would retaliate. And while this battle appeared won, corporate warfare had many fronts. She needed to gather her strength for the challenges still ahead. Massachusetts General Hospital's VIP wing operated with the quiet efficiency of a luxury hotel. Maya Washington sat propped up in a private room, an IV delivering fluids and medication to counteract the food poisoning. Despite doctors' recommendations for overnight observation, she insisted on attending to business matters. A makeshift command center had formed around her hospital bed, laptops open, phones buzzing, and her core team assembled via secure video conference. The lab results confirmed salmonella contamination in the chicken sample you preserved, Dr. Elaine Chen reported, reviewing the expedited test results. The bacterial count suggests deliberate mishandling. It wasn't just undercooked, it appears to have been stored improperly before cooking. Maya nodded, processing this confirmation of what she'd already suspected. The evidence of intentional food tampering elevated the case from civil to criminal territory. Our social media monitoring shows Chum flying while black trending nationally, reported Devin Williams, Phoenix's communications director, joining via video. Medicorp is attempting countermeasures, claiming you're exploiting racial tensions to distract from quality concerns with Phoenix devices. On a wall-mounted screen, Medicorp's hastily issued press release glowed. While racial discrimination has no place in America, we caution against accepting unproven allegations from competitors seeking to deflect attention from serious questions about device safety. Desperation tactics, Maya observed. How's the public responding? Overwhelmingly in your favor, Devin replied. Passenger videos show clear discrimination. Several medical associations have issued statements supporting Phoenix's safety record. Medicorp's counter-narrative isn't gaining traction. The hospital room door opened as Kimberly arrived, tablet in hand. The Westfield board is requesting to move tomorrow's merger meeting forward to 9 a.m. instead of 2 p.m. They're concerned about Medicorp's interference attempts and want to finalize terms sooner. Maya smiled slightly. The accelerated timeline indicated Westfield's eagerness to close the deal, a significant negotiating advantage. Accept the new time, and inform them I'll be bringing additional counsel specializing in corporate espionage cases. On another screen, Phoenix's legal team provided updates on the rapidly expanding investigation. We've obtained preliminary warrants for electronic communications between Reynolds and the flight crew, Sandra Lopez, chief counsel, explained. Initial findings show James Peterson worked for Medicorp's events team for 3 years. More concerning, Reynolds' property management company, Ascendant Holdings, owns the apartment complex where Peterson, Morris, and Wilson all reside. He's their landlord? Maya asked. The connection now crystal clear. Exactly. Reynolds had leverage over them beyond just corporate connections. We're exploring whether rent concessions or other financial incentives were offered. The complexity of Reynolds' scheme was impressive, if morally reprehensible. He had orchestrated multi-layered pressure on the crew, combining financial incentives with the implicit racial bias he assumed would make them receptive to targeting a black passenger. Maya's phone chimed with an emergency alert. A breaking news notification displayed. Medicorp executive accused of orchestrating racial discrimination and corporate sabotage. Simultaneously, her email pinged with a message from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Footage you should see." Maya opened it cautiously, wary of digital threats. The attached video showed Reynolds in Logan Airport's first-class lounge before their flight, huddled with James Peterson and Rebecca Wilson. Though the security footage lacked audio, the body language clearly indicated conspiracy. Reynolds passed what appeared to be envelopes to both crew members. The sender remained anonymous, but the message text provided context. Not everyone at Medicorp supports these tactics. Some of us still have conscience. More evidence available if needed. Internal dissent at Medicorp. Another unexpected advantage. Maya forwarded the footage to her legal team for authentication and potential use in legal proceedings. Despite the mounting evidence in her favor, Maya felt her strategic mind analyzing potential vulnerabilities. Reynolds wouldn't surrender without deploying every weapon in his arsenal. The merger meeting still presented risks, particularly if board members harbored hidden biases or Medicorp had planted doubts through back channels. "What's the status of the Boston press coverage?" Maya asked, considering public perception's impact on tomorrow's negotiations. "Mixed," Devon replied. "Most outlets are reporting on the discrimination angle, but the Boston Business Chronicle published a piece questioning whether the incident was being leveraged opportunistically to secure favorable merger terms." Reynolds has connections at the Chronicle, Kimberly noted. The publisher belongs to the same country club. The old network still held influence, especially in Boston's traditional business community. Maya needed to counter not just Reynolds' overt attacks but also the subtle undermining through established relationships. As the team continued strategizing, Maya's phone rang. Robert Campbell again. She put him on speaker. "Maya, we've completed preliminary interviews with the crew," Campbell reported, his voice grave. "They've admitted Reynolds promised them promotions to first-class international routes if they helped create difficulties for you. They claim they didn't know about the contaminated food, but Peterson's text messages suggest otherwise." "What's their status?" Maya asked. "Suspended pending termination proceedings. The airline has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. But there's something else you should know." Campbell paused. "We've discovered Reynolds has significant real estate, holdings in Boston, including the apartment complex where most of our Boston-based crew lives. The pattern expanded beyond the flight crew to potentially include local Skyline staff, a disturbing escalation of Reynolds' influence. One more thing," Campbell added. "Our acquisition team flagged an unusual stock movement pattern. Medicorp appears to be positioning for a hostile takeover attempt of Skyline Airways." Maya's mind rapidly processed this new dimension. Reynolds wasn't just trying to stop her merger, he was simultaneously working to acquire the airline, likely to prevent her from doing so, and to expand Medicorp's corporate ecosystem. As Maya ended the call, she noticed her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the medication and lingering effects of the food poisoning. The merger meeting was less than 15 hours away. She needed rest to perform at her best, yet the cascading developments demanded attention. "We'll continue monitoring developments," Sandra assured her. "You need to recover your strength for tomorrow." Maya nodded reluctantly, recognizing the wisdom in her attorney's advice. As her team departed, leaving only Kimberly to coordinate ongoing efforts, Maya allowed herself to close her eyes briefly. The corporate chess game had expanded far beyond what Reynolds could have anticipated when he boarded that flight. What he had intended as a simple sabotage operation had evolved into a multifaceted battle spanning industries, public opinion, and potentially federal investigations. Tomorrow's merger meeting would be just one front in a war that had suddenly grown much larger. And despite Reynolds' resources and connections, he had made a fatal miscalculation in underestimating Dr. Maya Washington. It wouldn't be his last mistake. At precisely 8:45 a.m., Maya Washington strode into the Connecticut Avenue Club's mahogany-paneled conference room, showing no signs of her ordeal from the previous day. Her tailored Armani suit projected power. Her stride conveyed unwavering confidence, and only the slightest pallor hinted at her recent illness. Behind her walked a formidable team, her chief counsel, 2 specialized attorneys, William Thornton, who had volunteered his considerable expertise, and Kimberly managing digital presentations. The Westfield board members stood as she entered, a subtle but significant show of respect that wouldn't have occurred 24 hours earlier. The merger landscape had shifted dramatically overnight, though Maya recognized the precariousness of public sympathy. Today's victory required substance beyond the previous day's incident. "Dr. Washington," greeted Theodore Westfield, the silver-haired patriarch whose grandfather had founded the company in 1912. We're pleased you could join us despite yesterday's difficulties. Innovation requires resilience, Mr. Westfield. Maya replied warmly, shaking his hand. Something our companies share. As they took their seats, Maya noticed two unexpected attendees at the far end of the table, Medicorp representatives, including its CEO, Franklin Porter. Their presence confirmed her suspicion that Reynolds' actions hadn't been rogue operations, but sanctioned corporate espionage. We were surprised to learn Medicorp requested observer status for today's discussions, Theodore explained with visible discomfort. Given existing industry relationships, we felt obligated to grant limited access. Maya nodded, unperturbed. Transparency serves truth. I welcome their presence. Porter shifted uncomfortably, clearly expecting objection. Reynolds was conspicuously absent, likely advised by legal counsel to maintain distance given the pending investigations. Before we begin formal merger discussions, Maya addressed the room. I believe we should address yesterday's events, as they directly relate to our business considerations. Without waiting for approval, Kimberly activated the presentation system. The screen displayed flight data, crew profiles, and communication records organized with clinical precision. Yesterday's discrimination wasn't random, Maya stated, her voice steady. It was orchestrated corporate espionage designed to prevent this merger. The evidence is substantial and disturbing. For the next 12 minutes, she methodically presented the case. Reynolds' strategic seat assignment, his property management company's control over crew housing, electronic communications showing coordination, and the deliberately contaminated food. The presentation was devastating in its thoroughness. Most compelling, however, Maya continued, is footage from multiple sources. The screen displayed synchronized videos from passenger phones, capturing James Peterson's dismissive treatment, Lisa Morris's condescending remarks, and Reynolds' accidental water spill on the merger documents. Midway through the footage, the conference room door opened. William Thornton nodded subtly to Maya as 3 additional passengers from yesterday's flight entered, witnesses he had arranged overnight. Among them was an elderly woman Maya recognized from first class, who had appeared sympathetic but remained silent during the ordeal. For those unfamiliar, these are fellow passengers who've voluntarily come to provide first-hand accounts, Maya explained. Their testimony corroborates what the videos show. Porter from Medicorp stood abruptly. This is highly irregular. Today's meeting concerns a potential merger, not unsubstantiated accusations against a competitor. Theodore Westfield raised his hand, silencing Porter's objection. Given that these events directly targeted today's negotiations, they seem entirely relevant. Please continue, Dr. Washington. The elderly woman passenger stepped forward. I'm Dr. Margaret Chen, Chief of Cardiology at Massachusetts General. I recognized Dr. Washington on the flight, but didn't intervene immediately, wanting to observe how the situation developed. What I witnessed was unmistakable discrimination coordinated with corporate interests to prevent medical innovations that would benefit patients. The revelation of her identity sent ripples through the room. Dr. Chen wasn't just any witness. She was a leading figure in the very field Phoenix's devices would serve. Maya hadn't orchestrated this development. It was the authentic support of someone who recognized injustice and its broader implications for patient care. As the presentation continued, Maya revealed the most damning evidence. Maya's teams had used advanced technology to reconstruct deleted text messages between Reynolds and the crew. On screen appeared Reynolds' explicit instructions. Make sure Washington misses the meeting. Food issue suggested. Plausible deniability essential. Porter's face drained of color. The Medicorp CEO suddenly appeared decades older as the weight of potential legal consequences settled on his shoulders. Corporate espionage carried criminal penalties, and the racial component elevated potential damages exponentially. These actions reflect desperation, Maya noted, her tone measured rather than accusatory. Desperation born from recognizing that Phoenix's manufacturing innovations make life-saving devices accessible to all patients, not just the wealthy. Medicorp's profit margins rely on artificial scarcity and price gouging, business practices increasingly unsustainable in today's Healthcare environment. The Westfield board members exchanged glances. Although old money conservatives, they recognized the shifting landscape, both morally and financially. Theodore Westfield had built his reputation on business ethics, despite his traditional outlook. Dr. Washington, Theodore spoke after a thoughtful pause. While these revelations are disturbing, how do they impact the fundamental merger considerations? This was the pivot Maya had prepared for, transitioning from the discrimination incident to substantive business matters. They demonstrate exactly why this merger matters beyond financial projections, Maya replied, nodding to Kimberly to advance to the next presentation section. The screen displayed a U.S. map with hundreds of illuminated points representing hospitals. The red points indicate facilities currently unable to afford Medicorp's cardiac devices. The green shows hospitals that could provide these treatments, at Phoenix's price point. The visual transformation was dramatic, nearly 70% of the map changing from red to green, particularly in rural and underserved urban areas. This isn't just business, it's about who lives and who dies based on geography and wealth, Maya stated plainly. Yesterday's discrimination against me personally reflects the same systemic problem, arbitrary barriers based on factors beyond individual control. For the next hour, Maya led a comprehensive presentation on merger synergies, manufacturing efficiencies, and market projections. The discussion remained firmly grounded in business fundamentals, with Maya demonstrating mastery of every financial detail despite her recent illness. As the presentation concluded, Theodore Westfield looked toward his board members, receiving nods of agreement. Dr. Washington, Westfield is prepared to approve the merger under the terms outlined, with one additional condition. Maya waited, expression neutral despite her internal celebration. We request a board seat dedicated to ethics oversight and healthcare accessibility, someone who can ensure these devices actually reach underserved communities as promised. That's precisely why this merger matters, Maya agreed readily. I would suggest Dr. Margaret Chen for consideration, given her expertise and demonstrated commitment to ethical healthcare. The elderly woman who had witnessed the discrimination and volunteered her testimony smiled slightly, recognizing the elegance of Maya's strategic thinking. Theodore extended his hand. Then we have an agreement in principle. As board members broke for a short recess before signing preliminary documents, Maya's phone vibrated with breaking news alerts. Her team had executed another carefully planned move. Phoenix Medical Technologies had just announced acquisition of Skyline Airways in a surprise deal, outmaneuvering Medicorp's hostile takeover attempt. Porter, checking his own phone, looked up at Maya with stunned recognition of her comprehensive victory. She had not only secured the merger, but captured the airline Medicorp had been targeting, all while facing down discrimination and illness. Dr. Washington, Porter approached, his voice low. Perhaps we could discuss a mutual resolution to pending matters between our companies. Certainly, Maya replied calmly. My ethics compliance team will be happy to outline necessary steps, beginning with revised pricing models for existing devices. Patients shouldn't wait for our merger to access affordable care. The counterattack was complete. Medicorp now faced federal investigations, public relations disaster, a failed acquisition, and potential antitrust scrutiny. Reynolds' attempt to exploit racial bias had not only failed, but precipitated his company's comprehensive defeat. As Theodore returned with merger documents, Maya signed with her lucky pen, the graduation gift from her immigrant parents. Their sacrifices had made this moment possible, this chance to transform healthcare accessibility for millions who, like her family once did, struggled against systemic barriers never of their own making. 1 month after the fateful flight to Boston, Maya Washington stood before a gathering of employees at Phoenix Medical Technologies' expanded headquarters. The merger with Westfield was complete, doubling their manufacturing capacity and slashing cardiac device costs by 63%, 3% better than originally projected. Behind her on massive screens, live feeds showed simultaneous celebrations at facilities across the country, including the newly acquired Skyline Airways corporate offices. Today marks not just corporate expansion, but healthcare transformation. Maya addressed the assembled crowd, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had fought battles both visible and invisible throughout her career. Over 800 hospitals that previously couldn't afford life-saving devices now have access. That translates to approximately 97,000 patients annually who would have been denied care. What Maya didn't mention was the personal cost of this victory. 3 days hospitalized with severe food poisoning, death threats requiring enhanced security, and the emotional toll of having her racial trauma publicly dissected by commentators with no understanding of the lived experience. But our work extends beyond medical manufacturing, Maya continued. Today I'm announcing the Equity in Service Initiative. The screens transition to show architectural renderings of an apartment complex, specifically the one where James Peterson and the other flight attendants lived. The property that Reynolds had used as leverage in his scheme. Phoenix has acquired this residential complex through our community investment division, Maya explained, but not for the reason you might expect. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Many assumed this was retribution, the ultimate power move of buying the building to evict those who had discriminated against her. Effective immediately, this property is being converted to affordable housing for healthcare workers, particularly those from underrepresented communities entering medical device manufacturing. The current residents, including the former flight crew members, will not be evicted. Surprised expressions appeared throughout the room. This wasn't the vengeful response many had anticipated. Discrimination thrives in systems designed to perpetuate power imbalances, Maya noted. Breaking that cycle requires changing systems, not just punishing individuals. What Maya didn't reveal publicly was that James Peterson had sent a handwritten letter of profound apology, acknowledging how he had allowed implicit bias and financial pressure to overcome his better judgment. Unlike the other crew members who hired attorneys and denied responsibility, Peterson had demonstrated genuine remorse. After the announcement, Maya retreated to her office where William Thornton waited. The retired civil rights attorney had become an unexpected ally and friend through this ordeal. Surprising choice not to evict them, Thornton observed, though his smile suggested approval. Eviction would be emotionally satisfying but strategically limited, Maya replied, pouring them both sparkling water. This approach generates more substantive change. Besides, one of them might actually learn something. Thornton nodded thoughtfully. Speaking of learning, the Justice Department called. The discrimination case is proceeding with additional charges of corporate espionage. They're particularly interested in the evidence of deliberate food tampering. Maya accepted this update with measured satisfaction. The legal consequences would unfold without her direct involvement now, as proper systems took over. And Medicorp? She inquired. Franklin Porter announced his early retirement this morning. The board is in emergency sessions discussing a complete leadership overhaul. Their stock dropped 17% since the incident. The corporate landscape had shifted dramatically. Reynolds had been terminated immediately after the Boston meeting, his reputation in tatters. Several board members had resigned as evidence of broader knowledge of his tactics emerged. The company now faced not just public relations disaster but serious regulatory scrutiny. And the healthcare impact? Maya asked, always returning to what truly mattered. Thornton smiled, understanding her priorities. Hospitals in 3 previously underserved districts have already scheduled their first cardiac procedures using Phoenix devices. A woman in Appalachia who waited 2 years for a procedure she couldn't afford is scheduled for surgery next Tuesday. This was the true victory. Not corporate acquisitions or stock valuations, but actual lives improved through accessible healthcare. Maya's phone buzzed with a notification. The specially designed app showed real-time tracking of Phoenix device deployments, a feature she had requested to maintain focus on patient impact rather than financial metrics. 212 devices deployed today, she noted with satisfaction. Her assistant appeared at the doorway. Dr. Washington, James Peterson is here for his interview. Thornton raised an eyebrow in surprise. You're hiring him? For our new corporate ethics and inclusion program, Maya confirmed. His perspective as someone who participated in discrimination, recognized his failure, and seeks redemption offers unique value. Redemptive justice rather than punitive, Thornton Sakain observed. Bold approach. The goal isn't punishment but transformation, Maya replied, straightening her jacket as she prepared to meet the man who had once served her poisoned food. Peterson will help develop anti-bias training for our partner companies, including airlines. His first-hand experience with how corporate pressure exploits implicit bias could prevent similar incidents. As Maya walked toward the conference room, she passed the wall displaying her company's mission statement. Healthcare is a human right, not a luxury. The words had guided her from the beginning, through medical school, through countless boardrooms, where she was the only black woman, through discrimination both subtle and blatant. James Peterson waited nervously, his once confident demeanor replaced with genuine humility. Seeing Maya, he stood awkwardly, unsure of proper protocol when facing someone you had wronged so profoundly. Dr. Washington, I don't deserve this opportunity, he began. This isn't about what you deserve, Maya replied candidly. It's about what serves the greater good. Your experience can help prevent others from making similar choices. That's valuable if you're truly committed to change. Peterson nodded solemnly. I am. I've spent weeks examining how I allowed bias I didn't even recognize to influence my actions, how I justified discrimination through the lens of financial pressure and corporate loyalty. Maya gestured for him to sit. Then let's discuss how that insight can create structural change. As they began the interview, Maya reflected on the journey from that first-class cabin to this moment. What Reynolds had intended as racial exploitation to protect corporate profits had instead accelerated healthcare equity, exposed discriminatory systems, and created opportunities for genuine transformation. The final irony came that evening, when Maya's assistant delivered a financial update. Phoenix's cardiac device had been selected for nationwide Medicare coverage, exponentially expanding accessibility. The decision had been influenced by a key committee member, a woman whose mother had received one of the first affordable Phoenix devices following the merger. Maya Washington had not just survived discrimination, she had transformed it into a catalyst for the very changes her company sought to create. The poisoned chicken served in first class had become the catalyst for a healthcare revolution that would save countless lives in communities historically denied access to essential treatments. In the end, what Reynolds never understood was that Maya's true power came not from wealth or position, but from unwavering commitment to a purpose greater than herself. That was a strength no amount of discrimination could diminish, and ultimately, the reason she had prevailed. This powerful story teaches us that discrimination often persists in spaces where power dynamics favor those who exploit bias for gain. Dr. Maya Washington's experience reveals how racism can manifest even in premium environments where service quality should be guaranteed for all paying customers. The narrative demonstrates that prejudice doesn't disappear with wealth or achievement. It simply takes more sophisticated forms. The story also highlights the strategic advantage of maintaining composure when facing discrimination. Maya's methodical documentation and professional responses ultimately strengthened her position rather than weakening it. She understood that emotional reactions, however justified, could be weaponized against her through harmful stereotypes. Perhaps most importantly, the tale shows how systemic change requires addressing root causes rather than merely punishing individuals. Maya's decision to transform the apartment complex into affordable housing and hire Peterson for the ethics program exemplifies a forward-thinking approach that breaks cycles of discrimination rather than perpetuating them. The corporate espionage element reminds us that discrimination is often exploited as a tool by those with economic interests in maintaining inequitable systems. Reynolds' willingness to leverage racial bias for profit represents how prejudice becomes institutionalized when it serves powerful interests. Finally, the story emphasizes that true leadership measures success by impact rather than personal vindication. Maya's consistent focus on healthcare accessibility, even while facing severe discrimination, demonstrates that genuine change comes from remaining committed to a mission larger than oneself, transforming personal obstacles into catalysts for collective progress. What discrimination have you witnessed or experienced that others dismissed as misunderstanding? Share your story in the comments below. Has someone ever underestimated you based on prejudice, only to be shocked when they discovered your true capabilities? Comment below and let us know how you handled it. If you believe everyone deserves equal treatment regardless of race, hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that expose the reality many face daily and showcase how resilience can transform injustice into positive change. Thank you for watching this story of determination and systemic transformation. May we all find the courage to stand firm in our principles when faced with discrimination, and the wisdom to transform those challenges into opportunities for broader positive change.